What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday we got the Season 3 Reloaded update, and I already covered some of the miscellaneous changes, like some of the movement changes, as well as like laser visibility. But today, we're going to be covering all of the weapon balancing changes, and there were quite a few here. So let's hop right into this. Keep in mind, it's going to be focused on multiplayer only. I'm not covering any of the Warzone specific changes. And also, you might notice on a bunch of my graphics, it says May 11th update. It was technically the May 10th update. Unfortunately, I didn't catch that until I put these graphics together, but honestly, that doesn't change the video at all. So let's start this off with the BAS-P. This one got several buffs to it. The first thing is we saw a very slight buff to some of our torso damage values here. And we also saw some minor adjustments to our headshot damage profile, although those ones weren't really that meaningful. Essentially, the only thing you should notice here is now, up close, we can get a 4-shot kill by just combining 2 limb shots with 2 torso shots, whereas previously, all 4 of our shots had to hit the torso if we wanted a 4-shot kill. So this actually improves the consistency of the BAS-P up close by quite a bit, even though it was such a small adjustment, and that's great to see there. Additionally, you'll notice a couple of our range values were slightly improved. That includes our maximum damage range as well as our minimum damage range at really long ranges. And another thing you'll notice here is with that damage adjustment, we can now maintain a 6-shot kill over 50 meters now, whereas previously that was limited to about 40 meters. So overall, some very nice improvements to the BAS-P, and especially with that up-close damage profile change, you should be noticing a good amount of extra consistency with this gun, and I definitely recommend giving it a shot after this update. Next up, something I know a lot of the competitive community is looking for is the adjustment to the Vaznev 9K. With this, the only thing they did here is they adjusted our maximum damage range from 10.2 meters down to about 8.7 meters based on my testing here. And that means this now has a slightly worse 3-shot kill potential compared to the Lachmann sub now. They're effectively the same though. We're talking like 0.2 meters of difference. But it's interesting because the Lachmann sub gets a more forgiving 3-shot kill potential if you're mixing in limb shots compared to the Vaznev, and therefore, technically speaking, the Lachmann sub is a little bit better when it comes to raw killing potential now compared to the Vaznev. Now, having said that, when you look at the attachments and how they play into competitive play, I still think the Vaznev is probably going to come out on top compared to the Lachmann sub. But who knows, you may want to try messing around with some Lachmann sub builds, or maybe the MP7 is even going to start to take over in that SMG category for competitive play. But then let's move on to the ISO Hemlock, which did receive a good handful of nerfs to various damage values on it. And essentially with these changes, what you're going to notice is it's going to be slightly less consistent with its 3-shot kill potential up close, if you're mixing in limb shots for instance. And this also applies to our 3rd damage range. You're going to notice if you're mixing in those limb shots, it is going to be a little bit less consistent at getting a 4-shot kill. So overall, after seeing this, the ISO Hemlock is still going to be an amazing assault rifle to use. It's just going to be slightly less consistent than it was previously. After that though, let's have a look at the Kastov 545, and this one saw a range adjustment, although this adjustment was very minor. Its maximum damage range is the same as it was previously, but the following 2 damage ranges have been slightly reduced here. So you may notice a little bit less consistency at longer ranges, but overall this gun should still feel pretty much the same in most situations. As for the Kastov 762 though, this one did get a little bit more of a noticeable nerf, and with this, they just reduced the base damage, which applies to the limbs and the lower torso. And the main effect that this has is it's no longer going to be a guaranteed 3-shot kill anywhere in the body in the maximum damage range. Now, it's still very forgiving. As long as you hit 1 upper torso shot mixed in with those other shots, it's still going to be a 3-shot kill. So in the vast majority of situations, it's still going to be a 3-shot. It's just if you are only hitting limb shots or you're only hitting lower torso shots, it may take you 4 shots to kill now with this gun. Then let's move on to the Lachmann 556. This one saw a couple minor adjustments to its damage profile. And as for how this will impact the gun in a real game, now if you mix 1 headshot with 2 upper torso shots, you can get a 3-shot kill, whereas previously you would only be dealing 99 damage at that point. So headshots are actually going to be quite a bit more effective now if you're mixing in those upper torso shots. And to top that off, we did see some slight improvements to our damage ranges. We saw an additional damage range added to this, which effectively extends our 4-shot kill potential to about 45 meters, whereas previously that was only a little bit over 30 meters. So with all of that in mind, while the Lachmann 556 still has a pretty slow time to kill potential compared to the other assault rifles in the game, its consistency has improved a little bit, and also its range potential has improved by a noticeable degree here. As for the next assault rifle, this is the M16, and with this, we saw a very noticeable reduction to our burst delay. from 120 milliseconds down to roughly 75 milliseconds. Keep in mind, accurately hand testing burst delay is quite difficult, so it may vary a little bit from this, but it's roughly 75 milliseconds now, which is a massive improvement for getting that second burst out. But what this also means is our overall recoil is going to appear higher due to the fact that we have less time to recenter between the bursts. Now, of course, the recoil within each burst is still going to be the same because it was only the burst delay that changed. It's just that it's going to be climbing more if you just continue firing as fast as you possibly can. Now, this reduction to our burst delay also improves our 4-shot time to kill potential from 342 milliseconds down to right around 300 milliseconds, so that's a nice improvement there. And you can also see here that our damage ranges were very slightly improved on the M16. So overall, this gun should be quite a bit more forgiving to use now because you can get that second burst out very noticeably faster. Next up, let's move on to the M13B, and the first thing they did here is they slightly improved our aim down sight speed from 240 milliseconds down to roughly 230 milliseconds. Additionally, there was a very slight adjustment to our hip spread accuracy, but this only applies while moving, and it was only about a 5% improvement here, so you likely won't even notice this at all. And then finally, our damage ranges were adjusted a bit here, and we can just see that they've improved our 4-shot kill potential as well as our 5-shot kill potential by a small margin on the M13B. So I wouldn't say that this is massively improved by any means, but it might feel just a little bit better than it did pre-patch. Then we have another adjustment to a very common competitive weapon. This is the TAQ-56, and just like with the Vaznev 9K, they just reduced our maximum damage range, and in this case it went from 28.2 meters down to 24.8 meters. So that will somewhat harm our 3-shot kill potential on the TAQ-56. I don't think this is going anywhere. It's still likely to be the top AR for competitive play. We just lose that little window of effectiveness with it. I should also mention a lot of people were telling me to check the bullet velocity on this. Many people were claiming it felt slower. At least with the base gun, this has not changed at all. I may revisit attachments in the future if it turns out something has changed there. But then let's get into the battle rifle category, and with the SO14 in semi-auto, we saw some very noticeable adjustments to our damage values. Not only did all of our up-close damage values get improved a little bit, but most importantly, our lower torso damage profile was improved by a noticeable margin, and it's now going to be a 2-shot kill anywhere in the torso as long as you're in that maximum damage range, whereas previously you had to hit an upper torso shot there. So that definitely improves our consistency with that 2-shot kill up close. And also it's worth noting, at longer ranges, we can get a 3-shot kill anywhere in the torso, whereas again, previously we had to hit an upper torso shot in order to do that. So overall, some nice and noticeable changes to the SO14 in semi-auto mode. And the only other base weapon adjustments we saw with this update were an improvement to the Bryson 800 and Bryson 890 in the mid-damage range. Now with hand testing, it's not really viable for me to figure out exactly what damage values they adjusted here on a per pellet basis, but I did do some hand testing with this, and the range at which you're able to get a one-hit kill, they didn't change at all with these guns. But what I suspect changed here is it's just going to be a bit more consistent at getting those one-shot kills within the same range restrictions we had previously. And like I said, that wraps it up for the base weapons that changed. However, there were a bunch of attachment adjustments as well on individual guns. The first one is they decreased the bullet velocity on the explosive ammo for sniper rifles. And just with the one example I tested here, this is with the FJX Imperium. And previously, our bullet velocity was 468 meters per second, whereas now it's roughly 355 meters per second with this explosive ammo. So this is a roughly 25% reduction to our bullet velocity, and that is going to be quite noticeable, especially for those Warzone players trying to get a one-shot kill to the head. And just remember, I just used this one sniper rifle as an example to test. This will apply to all of the sniper rifles and their explosive ammo. After that, the Fennec double tap mod saw an increase to its maximum ammo potential as well as its starting ammo. And with our starting ammo, this was actually really noticeable. It went from 12 in the magazine that you spawn with as well as 40 in reserve, whereas now we get 12 in the magazine plus 72 in reserve by default. So that is a huge improvement to this double tap mod, and that makes it a lot more attractive to use now. Then, the larger magazine attachments on the guns all saw a reduction to our aim down sight speed penalty, and I just used the M4 as an example. Keep in mind this applies to, I believe, all of the guns in the game and larger magazines with them. This is just the one that I decided to test pre-patch and post-patch. And with a 45 round mag, it used to have a 37 millisecond penalty to our aim down sight time. Now it's only a roughly 20 millisecond penalty. So a pretty noticeable change there, but a much more noticeable change came with the 60 round mag. This used to have a 60 millisecond penalty. Now it only has about a 35 millisecond penalty. so it's a lot less punishing to use those for aim down sight time, but this also applied to movement speeds. And again, I'm just using the M4 as an example here. With the 45 round mag, our movement speed pre-patch was 4.61 meters per second, and post-patch it's 4.67 meters per second. And with the 60 round mag, pre-patch 4.53 meters per second, and post-patch 4.63 meters per second. So definitely some big improvements. It's a lot more attractive now to use those larger magazines. It's not nearly as punishing, and that's great news. On the flip side of that, we also got some buffs to the smaller magazines that are smaller than default, and with this one I used the Kastov 545 20 round mag as my example. And you can see there was just a very slight improvement to our aim down sight speed with this, and also a very slight improvement to our movement speed, and quite a noticeable improvement to our sprint to fire times. After that, the Corvus Masterkey Underbarrel shotgun got some adjustments. First up, its aim down sight speed was improved from 420 milliseconds down to 320 milliseconds, so that's a huge improvement there. Also, our pellet spread while aiming down sight was significantly improved. This was roughly an 18% improvement here, which then also improves our one-shot kill potential from about 9.2 meters up to 9.6 meters. And our total ammo reserve went from 16 rounds up to 20 rounds on this, so these were some very nice buffs to the Corvus Masterkey. Now on top of that, there were some movement speed improvements to some of the individual attachments on pistols, but unfortunately I can't really isolate these properly, especially on the X13, because you have to combine attachments and I just don't have a pre-patch comparison there. However, there is one last attachment I wanted to cover here, and this is the Lockshot KT-85 Muzzle. And with this, it did get a slight nerf to horizontal recoil, but a slight buff to its vertical recoil improvements. And I wanted to do a side-by-side example here with the MP5 using this muzzle attachment, and you can see our horizontal recoil did get a little bit worse, but our vertical recoil got a little bit better, especially that jump after the first 2 to 3 shots fired. And with that, that's finally going to wrap it up for all of the multiplayer weapon balancing that we saw with the Season 3 Reloaded update. There were definitely some very noticeable changes to some of the weaker guns out there, like the BAS-P for instance. But honestly, beyond that, I wouldn't say there were any massive standout changes with this update. A lot of minor adjustments here that will make some of the weaker guns feel a little bit better and some of the better guns feel a little bit worse, but I don't think this is really going to mix up the meta a whole lot. Now, of course, those are just my thoughts and opinions on this update, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about the weapon balancing in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.